It's Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022, 2 p.m. This regular BOC budget workshop is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andrews,
Here.
Commissioner Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Hudson,
Here.
Okay, first is public comment. Though we have no one in the audience, I'll say this for those that are watching live stream that can't see that. The floor is open for public comment. Anyone that would like to make a comment, please step forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to speak on anything that is not on today's agenda. Okay. Today, for topics for discussion is fiscal year 2023 personnel and operating budget presentation. Mr. Gomez, would you like to open?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Commission. Good afternoon. Again, I'm Robin Gomez, Madera Beach City Manager. The purpose of this workshop is to provide information and have discussion, input, a good interaction regarding our fiscal 2023 city budget for all funds, with the main focus on our personnel budgets and the first preview or look at a preliminary fiscal 2023 overall budget. This is a balanced budget as we are required by Florida statutes to provide. There are some changes to the budget from the current year, and we will, myself and Finance Director Andrew Laughlin will go through some of these changes, as well as department heads are here to answer any questions. But really an opportunity to have dialogue, discussion, to go over what we are proposing for the budget, with an understanding that this is, again, the first discussion regarding a complete and total budget for next year. So again, we'll be open to questions and comments. I wanted to begin by, as we had mentioned before, that to provide an update on the personnel. We proposed as a starting point, based on a variety of factors, that we would have our personnel budgets with an across the board an 8% increase, based on, again, several factors, mainly inflation, difficulty filling positions, ensuring that we're able to retain our workforce, our current employees, and realistically to basically cover what have been, just the basic cost of increases in goods and services that everyone is experiencing. As we go through this, clearly there will be questions, there will be comments, and we are open to certainly any input, any comments, and any guidance from the mayor and the commission regarding this. But that's the starting point for personnel. We are proposing the addition of, at this point, of two additional part-time positions, one in recreation, one in community development. That's what is included here. We're still determining in some components of the city, specifically areas that we outsource or we use outside firms or vendors. I think as the commission and the public may be aware, we do outsource, for example, for we don't provide water or sewer, that's Pinellas County. We contract with Pinellas County to provide sheriff or policing services. We also contract with an outside firm to provide our information technology, or nearly 100% of our information technology. We further contract for engineering services and various site plan and planning reviews. So there are a couple of positions that we've left in this budget from prior years that include at least like an IT director, information technology director, and supervisor. But again, other areas that we outsource, we're constantly reviewing the costs associated with that and obviously the performance. But for those services, with the exception of the sheriff, we will later this year, issue requests for proposals or requests for qualifications for some of those services such as engineering, information technology, and others that we may look to do. This is a balanced budget, just to kind of preview at, and let me get to the item by fund, a total citywide budget of just over 30, under 35 million, or 868,562, of which 10.2 million is the general fund. So approximately, 47% of our operating revenue comprises the general fund. We are proposing for the fiscal '23 budget that we do add a parking fund where we separately record all revenues and all expenditures associated with parking throughout the city, with the exception at Archibald Park. That all of those parking revenues and expenditures are captured in the Archibald Park Fund, but we are proposing that we separately account for in the rest of the city. We are also, at this point, proposing the same millage rate as the current year. We currently levy 2.75 mills, or that's $2.75 for every $1,000 in value. We're not proposing at this point an increase or a decrease to that. Keep in mind, we did receive the preliminary tax roll information from the Pinellas County property appraiser showing and this is up on the screen, but it is a very small spreadsheet. It is in your packet, where we are at this point experiencing a 14.1% increase in the valuation of properties within our corporate city limits. Again, for anyone who may be listening, the property taxes have two components to them: the valuation of the property, and that is determined by the Pinellas County property appraiser, and that occurs every year. So again, the Pinellas County property appraiser sets the value, whether that's an increase or a decrease, and based on market conditions in the last few years, those have continued to increase at fairly high levels. Again, for Madera Beach, the proposed increase in valuations is just over 14% for all properties within our city limits. The other component to the property tax rate, as I mentioned already, is the actual tax rate or millage rate, which again is 2.75. We are in specifically the general fund, as I mentioned, just over 10 million. As we're proposing right now, the property taxes do make up the majority of that revenue, over 45%, and that has been due to the growth and mainly the value of properties. That revenue source has increased from year to year. We do not have currently, but we should very shortly, what the rollback rate, so the actual tax rate or millage rate that could be levied to generate the same amount of property tax revenue next year as in the current year. But we will certainly, once that is finalized, and the Pinellas County property appraiser should finalize the tax roll in a few weeks, I think by July 15th, I think is.
When I think close to the beginning of July.
Yeah, and so within the next few weeks, we should have the final tax roll from the property appraiser. And as we can go, we'll go through this throughout this workshop, but we have details for, again, each one of the funds, the largest being the general fund. We have, and the revenues that comprise the general fund. But we'll go through each one of these and really kind of, again, listen to what direction you would like for us to go. But as I stated already, we do have a balanced budget, but likely some changes that we can make. Andrew, if there's anything you'd like to add.
I think, yeah, good synopsis overall, so we can kind of maybe take this in sections. If we want to just go chronologically through the document, I think the first part is the personnel, if we want to hit that first. But I'm open to however Commission like to tackle this. I've got my notepad ready.
Okay.
Lots of spreadsheets.
Who would like to start? If no one wants to jump in there, I'll jump in there. Okay. You know, the economy is hitting us all, including myself. Don't be retired and hit 2 economic downturns. Having said that, I know we had this discussion last year about bringing the people that are on the lower end of the scale, bringing them up, and the people, and I feel the same way about this year. I have no problem down on the lower end of the scale, but I think over the $15 mark, maybe even if we go a little higher than that, I think 8% is overly generous, even in this economy. That means an $8,000 raise for a lot of the folks that are already up, pushing the $100,000 range. So for me, over the $15 mark, I think we need to reduce that from 8 down to 3 or 4%. That's just my feelings on it. Floor's open.
I agree with you that the 8% is too high for the upper numbers. I'm not sure that, I think I would be further north than $15, but I'm not sure what that, if that's $20 or what that is yet. I always have trouble when we're jumping back and forth between yearly salaries and hourly.
No, I would agree 100%. Now, that being said, I think the top people running each division, I think we need to take a look at where they are in respect to the competition. And I don't think they should be the highest. I don't think they should be the lowest. We should have an idea of what that mean rate is, that mean salary is, to kind of have some sort of comparisons. We want to be fair, but yeah, I generally, for the person that's in early, in late, works the hardest, the rock stars of the people that work here, I think they should be compensated. Now, do you take each director and ask them to propose a budget for their team? I think that would be a great start. Bring that to the city manager and talk about that and propose that. But generally, I would agree. I think the lower end of the scale are the people that are really struggling. They're the ones that are going to be the upcomers. In future years, we want to mentor them and take care of them. But some of the big raises for the top, I think we need to evaluate.
Yeah, I do, and I would think you probably went through that process in coming up with these figures during meetings with staff. Mr. Gomez? Yes. Okay. As I understand, a survey was done on other cities in the area a few years back, and I think we're pretty much in line with other cities and other jobs that are out there in other cities. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, first and foremost, for anybody in the audience, please don't take anything personal. Nobody's name's on these things, so we, and I don't push this on Andrew and Robin. There has been some, and I don't want to go through a long history lesson and go through this again, but the reason why we're in the spot we're in right now is because of some mistakes that were made in the past. People weren't keeping their eye on some of the stuff, and some of the stuff is still in here that drives me bananas or bonkers. We were also going through the procedures of taking, when losing people of tenure, we were hiring people, sometimes from the outside with no prior knowledge or experience, and hire them to the same salary and above salary than the person that they were taking over for. Complete disaster. It was also, we were taking people that were working as interim directors and elevating them to higher salaries, and then when they returned back from not being an interim director, not changing that. And, there's plenty of blame to go around, and, but it starts here. There was a commission that approved those budgets, there's a commission that approved those changes, and it kind of puts us in the spot that we're in right now. So one of the reasons why I brought this up last year, to go through positions and not to go position by position, because that's not even possible. But one of the reasons I brought it up last year is to see where we were. And we made a lot of changes last year, and I think that was a good idea. We're going to have to make some changes this year, too, because, just even looking at this, we've got, on page 4 of 42, right from the jump, on the top line, park supervisor. We don't have a parks department. Why do we have a park supervisor? Okay? And why would a park supervisor make $12 an hour more than a senior ground maintenance person that's been there almost the exact same amount of time? That makes no sense. And to give that person an 8% raise is ludicrous. So, there are ways to do this. As far as, one of the reasons, and I know that some people have a stronger opinion than this than I do, the reason why a couple of years ago we needed an HR director was because we were in chaos. We had bad management. Well, now we have Robin, okay? And, I don't think there's any particular reason that, and remember, our HR director is handling just HR issues. We have 100 employees. Do we have that many issues that we need a $62,000 a year employee with an 8% raise, okay? All of the HR stuff, as far as from the financial end, is handled at Andrew's department. Payroll and benefits and all that is handled out of one department. We're paying $62,000 for somebody to handle disputes when we could rewrite our internal book and maybe make the Civil Service Commission a little bit more in-depth with something like that, or hire from within and combine a few positions. There's lots of places where we can save money. The 8% really doesn't scare me. It doesn't scare me if this is, but I laugh, and some of the people back here are going to, because I've made this statement before. Okay, if inflation's 8%, you want an 8% raise, that's fine. Now, if it drops 4% last year, you're willing to take a pay cut next year. I don't think anybody's going to raise their hand to do that. So I think we can find a happy medium here where we can kind of do that. But we also need to look at what some of our directors are making, because I think that some people got hired in a different era, let's say, that maybe wasn't as fiscally responsible as this one, and bring everybody that, depending on their experience, within the same ranges. And that's an administrative function. That's not really ours. Robin can look through that, and it's not that he has that many direct reports. But I think if we look through this a little bit, I think there's some tweaking that we can do. I like the budget as a whole. Again, the number doesn't scare me. 8%, if you're making $100,000 a year and it's 8%, okay, let's not get too caught up on the dollar figures. If somebody deserves an 8% raise, let's give them an 8% raise if they're doing the job. I don't really have an issue with that. I think where our real problem is going to lie is on the lower ends. I can tell you from experience down the road here that trying to hire people right now in the $12, $13, $14, $15, $20 an hour range first off, you're not getting the talent that you probably want. Secondly, if you're not attracting them with benefits, this is a good job. I mean, a city job's a good job. People know that, but we do also have to be competitive. We don't want to get beaten out by Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, I mean, let's be realistic about it. That's pretty much it. I mean, if we're just going to start on that line, I do think there's some changes that can be made. If people need extra help and extra support, and they can bring in extra revenue with it, all for it. But, you know, let's kind of take it step by step. It looks like, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but it also looks like our revenue's doing really well for the year. It looks like we're pretty much on target. What do we budgeted at, 21 million, guys? Andrew, does that sound about right?
For 22?
22,
For 22?
yeah.
Oh, the 2023, but, okay, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong page. But the actuals right now, what are we, 8 months in?
Yeah.
About 8 months in, so, okay. So we're probably close to,
We're looking at relatively on track
okay.
in terms of budget versus actual through May.
Okay. And you're comfortable with that $21 million, besides the transfer and the other finance, the $21 million as far as for next year, for a revenue number?
Oh, in terms of the FY '23 budget? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I mean, look,
maybe-
it's preliminary, so things are going to change. So,
Right, but we're fairly looking at, I mean, looking at trends for the last few years for, you know, things that, a lot of things that we don't control, such as, you know, I mean, parking, for example, we don't completely control that. That's based on the number of visitors. Other larger revenues, franchise fees from Duke Energy, it's based on electric consumption. You know, the half-cent sales tax, the revenue sharing, things that are kind of set by statute. So we have the trends for that as well as everything else. So our revenues have been increasing from year to year. We're fairly confident that will continue into next year's budget.
Yeah, I'm not looking for any guarantees. Look, anybody knows about a cyclical market around here, I can tell you some horror stories. But but yeah, I mean, I looked through a lot of this, and a lot of this, there's no real big surprises. I just think we need to tighten up some of this other stuff, and if we're going to give, I mean, 8% is a lot, but if we're going to give even anywhere near that percentage, we got to make some cuts somewhere else if we have to, and without diminishing the service that we're providing. So if, you know, the next meeting that we have, we can sharpen the pencil a little bit and see where we can make some changes to offset some of these costs, I think that would make me feel more comfortable. I don't know, but I'm not going to speak for everybody else. That would make me feel a little bit more comfortable about whatever number we come up with percentage-wise going forward. Okay, thank you.
Well, and Mr. Gomez, if you will, go over the benefits that this city has for its employees, because we're way out in front of even the private sector with benefits that this city offers. So Madeira Beach is not on the bottom of the pile by any means on salaries and benefits, and I just truly think 8% above a certain figure, and maybe that's not $15 an hour, maybe it's a little higher than that. But I think that's where we really need to focus. And when you change that, when you get that to a more reasonable figure, then you're going to see the budgets for each department come down more into range, to a closer range to what they were a year ago. So that's my feeling on it. And you know, I know we furnish health care, we furnish educational benefits.
Mr. Mayor, you're correct. I mean, we do provide benefits like many other cities. We're not at the bottom. We're not all the way up at the top. But we are, I would say, comfortable with the benefits that we do provide all of our employees. As you pointed out, we do provide 100% of a medical coverage to the employees. They do pay for their dependents, but we do provide a plan free of cost to the employees. We also offer a contribution to a retirement. It's not a pension, but to a retirement similar to other cities. And again, that's provided completely by the employer. We do provide essentially 11 paid holidays, most of them the federal holidays plus two floating holidays. We do provide vacation based on years of service and 10 or 12 sick days. I don't remember the exact amount. So we provide kind of the standard, package of benefits. We do offer, tuition reimbursement to those employees who are, at that point, and they make a request for, completing an associate's, a bachelor's, even a master's degree. So we do provide that, and I would like to, we do have I know we come in here every day, do obviously the best possible job that we can, all of us. And it's not, this is a fairly nice place to work also. I will say that in the 6 months that I've been here, it is a great place to work. And, as we continue to have the commission support, obviously the employees greatly appreciate that. But it's good to look at the benefits. That's not obviously the main reason why employees come to work here, but it is obviously very important, as well as compensation. Compensation is typically, probably the most important when somebody is looking for a job. How much revenue will I have, and to be able to have the quality of life that you currently have at that point. I think that covers most of the benefits that we provide. I don't know, Sean, others that I left out, but.
Yeah, well, if we could all think a little bit more about this part of the budget. Personally, and I hate to say it, and I know I'm got a bunch of eyes out there throwing rocks at me right now, but.
Well, Mayor, if I may, I think some of you mentioned a specific number and obviously some ideas on how to do this, but we'll bring you back a sort of a spreadsheet showing that our minimum salary that we pay, essentially $12.50 an hour, that we would bring that up to $13.50. And then we will be required by 2026, I believe, or 2025, to have a $15 an hour minimum wage. So we're still a couple of years, and as I had shared with each one of you in the past, that we would look to incrementally get to that level over a few years. But as I think, Mayor, as you stated, those positions that we would look at those above $15 an hour and provide, the amounts that were provided were anywhere from 4 to 5%, or we can give you both or one and show what that would look like, either a 4% or a 5%, and give you some comparisons of positions and how we compare to some of our neighboring cities. I know that we are below in some positions, we're good on other positions, and there are only a few that we are above, especially, for some cities, it's a little smaller than, well, they have fewer employees than we do. South Pasadena, for example, their salaries seem to be quite higher than ours. But St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island, again, some are below, some we're very comparable, and some are a little bit higher. But we can certainly bring that back. But I was looking for if there's a specific number that you would like. I heard 4 or 5%, and that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, Robin, I do have one quick thing to add. I maybe, because I know how tough it is for some of our directors to fill some of these entry-level positions right now. And to me, if we could get ahead of the curve and just go to $15 an hour as a minimum now,
Okay.
we're going to be able to attract people that'll be here for the next couple of years and not just keep recycling people at the lower levels. Maybe bring them in, they get comfortable, and they're going to stay. The turnover at those levels is terrible, and we all know it, and we all know that there's a cost that's associated with turnover, retraining and bringing new people in and getting them acclimated, seeing if they work out. Drug tests. There's just so many different processes that go along. If we just go out and find decent people at a decent wage right now, It's not going the other way. If we're going to get it there at 2026 anyway, it's not going the other way anytime soon, or probably forever. So let's get there. Let's get it set. Let's at least be a little progressive on that. If we've got to skimp a little bit on the top end to make that happen, I think it'll be well worth it. Just one man's opinion on that.
So what does the commission think of going ahead and raising the minimum to 15 an hour, and above that, do 4%? Then we get them on up there, and then we hopefully will eliminate some of the problems that we're having in retention on those lower end jobs, and also bringing people in the door to accept the jobs.
I would think that's a great start. I think the $15 at the lower end should be a minimum. But I still go back, well, a couple of things. You brought it up, Mayor Hendricks, about the benefits. I don't know, Andrew, if that's something that could be actual column,
We can provide that.
even if it was limited just to the health benefits, but a benefit so that when we're looking at what that value of that job is, is it a percentage? Is it a dollar? Is it the same type of benefit at the top that it is at the bottom? But I feel like each department head works with their group, and they have a perceived value, and whether it's used or not, I think that each department head, when they meet with the city manager, they can have some input and review what they believe each of these positions, where, maybe put a wish list in. But in general, I don't feel like just a swath, 4%, everybody's good with 4%. Personally, I think there's some people that need to be acknowledged for doing a job well done. That's all.
Commissioner Curtin, just to add for the benefits, the only it's the same percentage for the retirement contribution for all employees, except mine. And just to remind everybody and everybody in the public, I have a 2-year agreement, so my compensation and benefits are in that agreement. And so just to be clear, but for everybody else, it's essentially the same benefits and the same costs. Everybody receives the same percentage contribution. Obviously, somebody making $30,000, that's a smaller number than somebody making $100,000.
Okay, so it's a percentage, even healthcare.
The healthcare is the same for every employee.
That's a dollar amount.
Yes, yeah, it's a set.
I'm just curious to
Yeah, we'll give you
what
that.
that value is. I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
we'll provide that.
So for a new employee in sanitation or recreation or the marina, is $15 enough to get a new person, or we're already behind at that?
Well, I would say for recreation, I think it will be helpful for the part-time. We essentially, not during the summer, but the rest of the year, we utilize part-time employees, and I think Jay can expand on that for our after-school program. And that's where there had been a struggle to fill those positions at $12.50 an hour. I think $15 it's certainly a much more enticing than $12.50 an hour. In sanitation, we've had a little bit of turnover, but not as much related to the compensation until recently. But those would go a long way to, I think, enticing and certainly at least some more applicants than what we've had, certainly for recreation, sanitation, and in public works. The marina, we had, I think, one employee that was below that amount that was just hired last year. And I mean, I'm sure that would help to retain having that type of an increase. Again, we don't know exactly, but I think that would be very helpful to retain the employees at those wages.
Well, I mean, guys, I saw you shaking your head, Megan. So $15 an hour isn't gonna make a dent in yours? Sorry, guys, I just want to get this right. I just,
Yeah, no,
let's
we
not
appreciate that.
keep going through this every year and, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were
No, that's fine.
crippled.
That's right. So I'm speaking just for myself for sanitation. I start my positions at 15 an hour. I've had an open position for 8 months. I have 0 applicants. I have been so short-staffed on my commercial route that I've got overtime out the wazoo. So for me, my commercial route is really struggling. And I've got Treasure Island also hiring, starting pay more than 15 an hour. Some people are doing retainage bonuses, so it's to the point where we're gonna meet and we're gonna talk about changing services because I can't fulfill what I need to do.
Right. Megan, have you asked for more money in this budget to try to get,
Well, I need
bit-
applicants first.
right? Okay.
That's,
No, you're right.
yeah, it's the same struggle everyone's going through now.
Yeah.
Even you, I imagine, Doug.
Yeah.
And just other than the vacant position that Megan mentioned, and it is in the spreadsheet, right now, we have existing employees that have, some that were just hired and at $15.60 an hour, $15.60 an hour. And then obviously others that have been here additional years, their salaries are higher, up to $16.47, $15.84, 17 an hour and higher based on years that they've been here. But we do have, it's been a struggle for the retention, but again, only until recently that we did hire somebody the first employee who said, I'm going somewhere else because
Because of money. Yeah.
because I'm going to get paid, I think, if I remember, it was $2 an hour
Right.
more.
And plus, we're asking for CDL drivers for $15 an hour, which is absolutely unheard of. I mean,
Well-
you can go anywhere and start out making 19. So,
Well, and that's a tough job. Those guys work their tails off
it is a
every
very
day.
tough job.
And I'm wondering if for that particular position, we do need to look at going a little more.
And potentially, I think, based on the gentleman that recently left, where I believe, Megan, you can correct me, that they were going to receive about $18 an hour.
Correct.
So, and that's a neighboring jurisdiction, or nearby. So that's part of this discussion is there is a little bit of struggle, and sanitation is exceedingly important. One other thing to mention for that is not a general fund operation, so it doesn't impact the general fund. Those are user fees that pay for that directly. So the every other month, the bill is every other month
Correct.
from Pinellas County Utilities for sanitation.
Well, we're paying it whether we pay it with an increase on straight time or whether we pay it
Right,
on
on overtime.
time and a half or overtime, we're going to pay it.
Correct.
So I think probably the sanitation department in particular, we need to take a closer look at on having a higher starting salary. So,
I would appreciate it.
hourly rate.
I mean, you hear over and over again, you can't get people to come to work. Well, they have to fill their gas tank to get here. So on the lower end, you've got higher rents, you've got fuel, you've got a used car you're trying to buy
Yeah. A lot of my
just to
guys
come to
live
work.
out of
And I would
town.
imagine, on the lower end again, you're just trying to get started. You have to have an incentive to come to work.
Correct.
So, but I go back to each department head coming back with a wish list. Sanitation department would, and justification on why, and sit down with Robin and then see where that all pulls together. And then again, comparing, I have no idea if these rates, how they compare to Treasure Island or Seminole or Largo or Indian Rocks or wherever. And, I was saying that's more at the top end because, you guys are the key to city, as far as I'm concerned. Let's look where that is, and you have a feel. All right, you know, and maybe it is a flat increase across the board because this has already been done. I don't know, I'm new here. But it's something that, they're the questions that come to my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did have a salary survey done here
It's been about
3 years
3
ago?
years.
4 years ago. We paid $5,000 or $10,000 for it, and the results that came back were pretty much what we've concluded here today. We were top-heavy, and then the then city manager did absolutely nothing about that fact and kept everything the same, so it was a waste of $10,000. But it did show us exactly what was going on. Our lower-end employees were not making the money that they needed to make in order to compete with other cities, and the upper-end people, and most of them are gone now, but the upper-end people were making more than their counterparts in bigger cities. So that was the results of that, so take it for what it is.
Not to beat a dead horse, there's a lot of 1 year.
Yeah, a lot of-
There has to be a reason for that.
Well, yeah, well, the entire employment market has changed to where, you know, even if you offer more, it's just getting people in the door to fill out an application and then show up after you hire them. So, okay, so you're going to get back to us with,
looking at some comparisons for various job classifications with neighbors, but you mentioned $15 as a minimum salary, and then above that, a 4% increase.
and showing us dollar-wise what the added benefits that we're supplying.
Correct, on the benefits, right,
Yeah.
breaking out the benefits.
Breaking that out.
Go ahead.
If I can make a suggestion too, if I'm sitting in your shoes, one thing that I'd be interested in is just knowing the overall financial impact. So if we
Well,
could-
yeah, and that's also why I talk about 4% versus 8%, because to
So,
me, and, you know, I'm only speaking for myself, but I think that even with what we've got going on now, that's quite a hefty increase.
we can provide, what I can do is just provide scenario analysis. Hey, what if we made the minimum $15 per hour and then beyond everyone else 4%, or $15 per everyone 8%, and then 6%, 2%? What is that different, what's that financial impact in all the different scenarios? We can give you multiple scenarios and see what you're comfortable with, because at the end of the day, this is a budgeting exercise that comes down to dollars and cents. And so this document here is derived from a spreadsheet, and I don't have benefits factored in, because if you increase the pay and the retirement contribution is based on a percent of pay, obviously that factors in, but just pure salary, I'm looking at, if we went a COLA of a citywide increase of 4% versus 8%, it's about $116,000 difference citywide for all funds, all departments. So those are, I think those are the kinds of things that you would want to know to help factor in your decision. And we can come back and give you more scenarios, more options, and see what the financial impact is, not only just on their pure salaries and wages expense, but also retirement contributions and the other benefits. Health insurance, not dependent obviously on pay increases, since that's a fixed amount per head count, but at least for the attributes that depend on a person's pay rate, we can give you that different scenario analysis.
Yeah, that's fine with me, and I think we'll see one, it's going to come down when we go from 8 to 4, but it's going to go up when we come up to 15. Or, Mr. Gomez, if you can get with Director Wepfer and see where she thinks we need to be
For sanitation.
in sanitation, to where we can get people in the door and get people on the back of the trucks taking care of the city, because I know that's a demanding job. I wouldn't want to do it. I kid with the guys when they come by my house and I ask them what they do for exercise, and those guys really work, and so whatever we can do to get some help there.
Mr. Mayor, while we're posing this question too, I'd like to ask Jay and Krabby and Jamal, I mean, I think you guys are the ones who would have the employees that would be affected by this increase the most. Is that going to help you? I mean, I don't even, Krabby, do you have open positions? I don't even know. No, you don't have anything. You're good. Okay. Okay, Jamal, that would help you at 15? Okay.
And I think, and just to, Jamal, you have one full-time position, there's two full-time and parking and three part-time? And speak into the microphone, sorry, Jamal. You go, or you can come up here.
Jamal, I'm available from about 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. if you need somebody.
Hired immediately. Jamal, Parking Department Supervisor, Mayor, Commissioners. Yes, I have two part-time
Two
and then one full-time.
Well, and
And
plus
including
you,
myself.
right, so there's two full-time, the supervisor, a senior parking enforcement, and then two part-time parking enforcement.
So I would say we're talking about 15 on the part-time also.
Yeah, yes, they would go up, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had my part-time evening parking attendant, parking supervisor, or parking employee already address that option, or that concern. So, and then, of course, my full-time is concerned as well, so two of my employees are concerned in that subject.
Okay. Jay, is that going to help you out too?
Yeah, we're more so in a retention phase. I think we would, I mean, we definitely retain a few people. I've had some folks say that would come back if there were more money available. But they've taken different jobs since then. Our season is, our challenge is seasonal hiring. Actually, looking up there, though, you know, I think about like about 3/4 of the way down, I've got a 3-year, 11-month employee at 1506 in the second level, and then we're going to put people to start in the first level at 15. So it's just that crunch.
Compression.
Compression, yeah. And I know that's always a challenge.
I get that, but we're also talking about, though, if we do the 4% to bump them up that 4%, and maybe between 15 and 20, we need to look at 5% rather than 4, and then when we get to 20, go to 4. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yep. And we could give you those scenarios based on
Okay,
the financial scenarios.
sounds like we're going to be killing a lot more trees. Okay. I think we have, is everyone pretty satisfied?
I just make one comment? It was talked about as a retainage bonus. You meet certain landmarks in working here, that there might be a bonus structure of some sort. Just I don't know who's doing that or how they're doing it, but I've seen that work. Just have the conversation.
I know of one of our neighboring cities that they did provide a fund to the city manager, to review if an employee is offered another position at a higher rate, that the manager has the ability to provide, to match that rate. I've only heard of one city currently doing that. I don't know if that's what your question was kind of geared.
No, it was brought up earlier, I think, that
Oh, a
some
bonus.
some
I got you.
districts are looking at doing a bonus if you've been there, and it
6
wasn't-
months or a year.
If you're there for a year, you might hit a certain bonus. If you're there for 5 years, you might be eligible for a different bonus. I don't
We- yeah.
know how, because that's a one-off. It's not a hourly thing, and it's a goal that the city would like to see, and I don't know, I'd just like some thought on that.
Mr. Lilly, yes, sir, you got something for us?
Just a little bit. Oh, this is on, okay. One of the things I want to clear up is, Commissioner Andrews, the sins of the past are not happening now. The salary study was actually 12% below. I don't think any of you were here then when it happened, but, we're starting from a little bit of a deficit. And I get worried about the top end. I've been through this situation before, and I don't want us to become a target for talent poaching. An example is Public Works in Clearwater, and going back to what Mr. Kerr said, Commissioner Kerr said, we don't have to be the highest, but we certainly don't want to be the lowest. Public Works Director for Clearwater starts at 108. We start at 85. And,
It's a whole lot bigger city, too.
well, I understand, but that's our
A lot more
competition.
responsibility on that bigger city.
And the other thing is we've been trying to hire a senior planner for
For a planner, right.
quite a
Few
long
months.
time, and St. Pete Beach is paying up to 90,000. We go as high as 78. So I don't want to go like the top end because I think you might start losing people.
Yeah, well, and both cities are, I mean, St. Pete Beach is 3 times our size,
I understand.
so.
That's it.
What are your thoughts about having a fund to match people who are employees that leave?
Well, it throws off your salary schedule. I'm not a fan of that because you're almost telling people to try and find another job to come back and get some more money.
Yes.
I don't
And
like
that's what
that.
I was worried about in compression.
I'm right there
because-
with you on the lower end, by the way. Right?
Yeah, if you do that, you'll see people coming in with offer letters from all kinds of, people be out spending, taking days off to go on job interviews just to get a better offer to
Right.
come and throw it in their boss's face. So, yeah, I mean, it's a cool idea on paper. It just probably wouldn't work in the real world, so.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, moving along.
I guess as I had mentioned earlier, just to a couple of new positions in, as I said, part-time for community development, recreation, and what was the other one, Andrew, that we had? I think community.
Have you got a page number on that?
Well, we're just on where the.
Trying to see where you are.
Yeah, the one that lists all the, I don't know what page this is. Yeah, it's right after the page, well,
They have gone too far.
I guess it's not numbered. Page 7, right, thank you.
7.
Just that page shows the total proposed full-time equivalents for each department. And so there's not a significant change from, actually a little bit of a decrease in the prior year to the current year, but we will be, reviewing this also, and, but again, so far we've had the requests from community development and recreation, but it might not be reflected on, in this spreadsheet, but just wanted to point that out.
I think there's also a position that we did want to add that didn't make the spreadsheet, just in Archibald, and the Archibald Fund for an additional grounds maintenance worker to,
That's the one that I mentioned in recreation, yeah. I think we're gonna put it in Archibald.
we'll put it in Archibald. Okay, so that's the one, recreation one you're referring to, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and well, there are a number of them that seem to really jump.
Well, like really just I think reclassification, like the building fund where for the current year, 7.75, and next year, 6.25. And Frank, that's not a reduction of it's not the elimination of a position, but unless that's an error. Okay.
The community development, that's the additional
The
person.
additional half
Yeah.
person.
But Public Works Administration goes up by over
Half of
100,000.
half of a position.
Goes from 192,000 to 295,000.
Well, I was looking at the actual full-time equivalents, the left side of that spreadsheet.
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Manager. We've talked about it a couple times. If you look at the community development line, I had that programmed in as a full-time position, but at a lower level, just a planning tech. I don't know I'd be able to find somebody for that money, but in order to process the lower level applications and research and front counter assistance that detracts from all the rest of the stuff we're doing. We were planning that out as a technical position, not a full planner.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at the total budgets, the
Yes,
figure
right.
I was looking at, and it's going from 340,000 to 417,000.
Right.
And that also includes at the 8% increase rate, so they'll be less, obviously, at the next version.
Okay, that's
but-
still,
We had also increased somewhat our consulting rates because of just all of the things we have to get done this
right,
year.
right, I know you got a full plate. Public Works Administration, 192,750 to 295,000, an extra. Extra 105,000.
And there's a half of a position addition on your Public Works Administration.
That's the mechanic.
No. Hello?
We can,
So that was the mechanic was moved from part-time to full-time due to the hours because of the problems that we've been having in the last 8 months with vehicles. So he was working over the allotted time and was moved to full-time.
or that's proposed for next year.
So that's kicking it up from 192,000, almost 193,000 to 295,000.
Well, that's the majority of that increase, but again, the other would be because we had included in here to increase by 8%.
But, yeah, but,
But it'll be, again, it'll be less when we come up with the next.
yeah, because
version.
that, you know, he's at what, $67 an hour?
It's close to that for the mechanic.
I mean, it's about a $60,000 impact by taking that mechanic at $57.39 an hour to full-time. So that's 60,000
Just for
of
that
your
position.
difference.
Well, you're talking, yeah, but I'm looking at a 105,000 increase in Public Works Administration. That's where I'm scratching my head.
So that leaves us 40,000, some of which is the 8%, which is maybe, I don't know, another 25,000 increase. And the rest I'd have to investigate.
Yeah, we can provide that. But again, it will be a little bit, it'll be less.
Well, yeah.
Going
and
forward, but
I've
we'll
just-
investigate.
I mean, our mechanic's the highest paid employee in the city. And I know he's good, I've heard that, but I also know
How is it that the fire EMS has gone down? On the,
It's,
That, we need to come back with a revision on that. We had the wrong number of hours, so ignore that, ignore the salaries expense for fire. Because it's union and their comp structure is different. And we didn't account for that in the formulas.
and they are based on their collective bargaining agreement where will be receiving essentially a 6% increase, or they've received it for the current year and 6% for fiscal '23 and fiscal year '24.
well, they're getting 3% plus their 3% step.
Right. So it's not a full 6% because interrupt, because it doesn't all occur at the same time.
Andrew, for the next meeting, at the page 7 of 42, where you have the funded positions and the wage increases, can you do that with revenue too? Can we go 2017 to, we don't need to go back that far. I just want to see where our revenues are in comparison with our growth as far as wages and benefits. And, I mean, I have, the funded positions, 13 positions, it looks like a lot on paper, but it's probably not because of how they're structured out. And, given that increase in funded positions, the increase in, the 4.2 to, well, that 5.5 is going to change with the fire, so it's probably going to be closer to 6, I guess. That's significant, but I guess cost of living and everything else that goes along with that. But I'd like to see just a quick comparison of where revenues are going, if they're tracking in the same direction, and we can kind of account for it that way and just justify it, okay?
So a multi-year.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to get, 2017 is fine, just 2017 revenues by department and go across to 2022, and obviously then projected 2023.
Got it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, back on that Public Works admin, that differential, so that total number, that 296,000 does include benefits, and then also that the mechanic, I think we budgeted last year, if I recall, as part-time, excluding benefits, and now including benefits. So that had another $10,000 to $20,000 impact.
So I'm just looking for that, employee on here. I don't see it.
Is there an offset for, you're going to a full-time mechanic, were we outsourcing that?
I think,
It was insourced, just part-time. That's how it,
But I'm just saying, has the workloads increased, or?
We have had significant vehicle issues in the last 6 months,
So
not
what-
to mention
so
we've
they weren't-
added on a high water vehicle for fire and also a boat, which has been in the works for the past 5 months, 6 months, and majority of the time of the mechanic has been spent working on those vehicles,
Right.
not to mention the garbage trucks.
The boat's under warranty. We just bought the boat, right? Talking about the fire department boat?
But we have to add things on there, lights and such, in order to get it to be able to be in service, which Leroy does because it's much cheaper than sending it out.
And you still need to maintain it regardless.
Correct.
The maintenance
Mayor, I think-
has to be done by a licensed mechanic to keep the warranty valid, and that's why we use Leroy as opposed, any of us could change the oil in the motor and service it, but that would void our warranty, so that's why we have to use a certified mechanic.
It makes sense. I was just curious that, was that budgeted somewhere else for outsource maintenance, or we just weren't doing the maintenance that we needed to do to the vehicles that we had?
The high water vehicle was not budgeted for maintenance, the boat was for this fiscal year. We knew we were getting the boat, so we did increase our maintenance a little bit.
I'm a firm believer in keeping things maintained, especially at the beach.
Yeah, we've kept well over 95% of the maintenance of our entire fleet in-house, and has done extremely well from, everything that I've observed here and what's been communicated to me from the past. So that's what we're looking to retain. Outsourcing it, we may be spending double this amount based on the level of experience and the knowledge and the individual that we have in that job classification right now. And it's tough to find somebody that can provide that level of fleet maintenance for anything from your standard pickup trucks to a boat, to a fire engine, to a high water vehicle, to, so that's, and what we're looking for next year is simply to make that a full-time position, and we'll review and evaluate, and if it needs to go back to the part-time the following year, then we will bring that back and make that determination at that time.
To add to that as well, when the tropical storm Ida came through, it really wreaked havoc on our ladder truck, and there were days where Leroy was literally, because the ladder truck was immovable, he would spend 3 straight days there trying to figure out the wiring issues just to get it to his shop so he could then have the appropriate tools to work on it. So that, and we're still dealing with it, just not as big of an issue now. Like sometimes a warning light will go off and he can take care of that because he's already gone through the entire wiring of that entire truck. So fire has definitely helped with the increase in Megan's budget there.
Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, there I am. Just because he is budgeted for full-time does not mean that he is working 40 hours a week. If Leroy doesn't have something to work on, he's not here milking the clock.
That's good to know. It is an hourly position.
Yeah, because that takes his hourly rate up.
Mayor.
Claire, I could barely hear you. What was that again?
On page 7 of 42,
Okay,
it says for the city clerk, there were 7 positions in 17 and 7 positions in 18. There were only 2 for each of those years.
Claire, I can address that. That includes the Board of Commissioners, so you see in 17 and 18,
Oh,
there were 0.
Right.
So I think we
I was just gonna
created
say
the
that.
Board of Commissioners Department.
Right. Likely the budget was part of the city clerk budget, so the city clerk department included the budget for the 5 members of the Board of Commission. And then again,
It was
it
a real waste of money.
questionable, I think.
so that explains it.
There was a clerk, assistant to clerk, assistant to the assistant.
Yeah, we haven't even addressed our raises yet. I mean, Commissioner Hudson's got to put gas in that yacht. I mean, at the prices now, I mean, you got to give him a little bit of a bump, no? God.
I did not ask that of any of you, so I'm glad you brought it up. And although that does bring, I'm sure Florida statutes has, and/or our charter, and I haven't really researched how, but at other cities that have been, it's increases to the elected officials' salaries and/or benefits, because I've worked in states where they did receive benefits. I'm not saying that, but just for full information. And in certain cities and states, you cannot give yourself an increase. It would be into the future. And I don't
You could
recall
stop. I was
Florida.
completely kidding. We make way too much money up here, man. We can't get a raise.
I was 17 cents an hour. I'm down to 16 cents an hour
With
now.
this meeting.
Okay. We discussed let me get back where we were.
We had been on page 7, just looking at funding. When you
Yep.
go to the next page just kind of gives an overview by fund.
Can I tackle this one
Go
just a
ahead.
bit?
Yep,
If you
go
don't
ahead,
mind.
Andrew.
I love this page because it's an overall snapshot by each fund, and then it kind of allows you to view the budget from a
Page 8.
Yeah, page 8. It's the overall budget summary. So this allows you to view the budget from a 30,000-foot level, and then from there, I think maybe we can dig in, and you can point out a certain line item in a certain fund and said, let's look at that further, and maybe we can go to the specific page from where that figure is derived. But as Robin mentioned, within each fund, he kept using the term balanced budget. And the balanced budget means the total sources and on that page equals the total uses. That doesn't necessarily mean the total revenues equal the total expenses. In some cases, if expenses exceeds revenues, we have to pull existing fund balance or net position, like our retained earnings, in order to balance that budget. In other cases, for some funds, our revenues exceed expenditures, and then we have what's called a carryover, so we can use that excess retained earnings, in the for-profit, realm, the owner's equity, and have that available for the future. So one's a fund balance net position available, where we have excess revenue over expenditures. Now we've got this fund balance net position available that we can carry forward for future years. And in other cases, expenditures exceed revenues, so we've got to use carryover in order to balance the budget. So that carryover use or that available fund balance net position are on specific line items, so you can see. So if you could focus on that just for a bit, and the fund balance net position carryover use, that's in the total sources, because that's a source that, in addition to revenues. And so for those funds that have that as a balance, that means our expenditures and other financing uses exceeded our revenues and other financing sources, and that's the figure that we need to balance the budget. So on all of them, I'm not too concerned. There's a somewhat large amount on the local option sales tax fund of $637,000, so we've got more anticipated project expenditures, $1.137 million, that exceeds what we have coming in for Pinellas money of $575,000, plus some modest interest income. But that's okay, in my view, because we have $2.116 million of fund balance that we haven't spent from previous years. So we've got a good fund balance buildup in that penny for Pinellas, so that lost fund, that in a certain year where we do budget more expenditures than revenues, that's okay, because we've got plenty of fund balance to back it. The stormwater has a huge number, $6,580,910. Well, that's because we've got a lot sitting in loan proceeds back from that 2019 issuance to fund those various stormwater projects, Area 1, Area 3, Area 5. So you're always going to see a big buildup there because look at what we have in capital outlay, $6,120,000. Clearly, we don't have operating revenue to cover that $6 million. We only have $700,000. So that $700,000 does a decent job, a good job of covering our expenditures, which is personnel and operating in the stormwater fund. Personnel was budgeted $281,660. Operating in the stormwater fund is budgeted at $342,250. So that $700,000 covers that, but it doesn't cover debt service, and it doesn't cover that big capital expenditure number. So we're using those debt proceeds to cover that, and then we're using a transfer in from the general fund of $1,100,000 to help fund the debt service requirements that we can see there. So that explains the stormwater fund and why that number is so high. All the other ones, except I'll talk about Archibald last, all the other ones were actually in a positive position. So even the general fund, we're dropping $594,484 to the bottom line. That's including our 8% COLA that we were referring to.
Andrew, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure, sure.
All the monies that we have in accounts, is the interest rate that we're getting ramping up as interest rates are going up, or are they locked in at a lower rate, or how's that working?
Currently, we're locked in because we want to be with the existing rate that we have with our bank when we signed an agreement for extension of our banking services 2 to 3 years ago. I think it was 2019, back when interest rates were pretty high, and we got about a 2.3 or 2.4% rate. Then rates dropped as low as 17 to 20 basis points, but we were still getting that 2.4%. So we've been very rich with that 2.4%. That does go away when our agreement ends with our bank later in this, towards the end of the calendar year. So we will need to replace that. Good news is rates are rising. So we might not get the best interest rate from our bank, so we'll shop that and we might go look at some different local government investment pools. You know, by the time we need to move out of that, our investments in that saving account and look elsewhere, will we be in that 2% range? I don't know. We'll see what rates continue to do. So we budgeted somewhat conservatively on interest income, knowing it's not going to be as bad as 0.2% or, 0.17%, but might not be as good as 2.4%.
Thank you.
So general fund, the building fund, sanitation fund, marina fund, the parking fund are all dropping excess fund balance to carry over for future years, which is a good sign. The most concerning one in this group is the Archibald Park Fund. You can see that has a carryover currently of $2,285,331. So you all see that. So the big reason for that is the beach growing project. So, and again, maybe I don't have the most accurate numbers, but we were looking at potentially spending over $3 million in fiscal year '23 on the beach growing renourishment project with, I think it was about 1.75 million coming in. So it's quite a bit of a differential. So that one, we might need to infuse that ARPA grant revenue for that beach growing project for the delta between what we're going to spend, what we're actually going to spend, and what we're going to get from the state appropriation for that. Because right now that delta was pretty sizable according to the budget. So that's why that number looks the way it is, but I didn't even budget ARPA in this yet. So those are ones where you can pick and say, okay, this one needs it the most based on the size of the project and other revenue sources associated with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Robin, do we have any estimates on the start date on the beach groins?
The actual construction, I think.
I mean,
maybe-
are we looking, have we put out an RFP?
Not yet.
We haven't done that yet. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I
No.
just kind of was curious.
Quickly, while we're on the subject, and I discussed it with Mr. Gomez, and that is, I don't know that we really need to replace groins that are way up the beach under the sand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So we did the surveying of that, I believe it was back mid-March, end of March. So we're in the surveying. They have to do the 100 years, and they have to go back and do all these models, and that will tell us how far back we have to go with the groins. So we are in the process of that. They are designing those and also working on permitting. So the start date is going to be totally dependent on permitting. We've already had the pre-apps with Army Corps and also DEP, which we think that we should move through the process pretty good because we've done renourishment to those groins before, but everything changes. So we're hoping to possibly start as soon as we're out of nesting season.
Okay, yeah, and hopefully we don't have to go all the way back, because I'm sure that'll save us a lot.
I don't believe that we will, because those groins go all the way up to the seawalls.
Right, and that's, I don't mind if they go out a little farther, but I won't tell.
No comment.
Okay.
Andrew?
Yes.
Going back to the stormwater, we haven't raised that rate for several years.
I think we said 2015, if I recall correctly.
So is that something we need to think about, or it still covers most all of the costs, and it's just the new constructions and things that are costing us money from the general fund?
I mean, it's covering our basic operating costs, our personnel, salaries, and operating expenses, operating supplies, equipment maintenance, but it's not covering debt service, it's not covering capital, so I mean, there's obvious need for assistance from the general fund as an additional funding source, but from what we discussed internally, it is certainly prudent to evaluate that rate and look to increase it for when we bring a new fees and collections manual to you all.
Okay, then another question, since Mr. Andrews isn't here. Isn't it about this time of the year that we have to start approving the millage, the preliminary millage rate, and then go through that whole process?
Sure, so it's around July 1st, if it's the 1st of July, or within the first few days of July, the very beginning of July, the property appraiser certifies the initial figures, and then each taxing jurisdiction, I believe, has 35 days, so usually it's by around August 4th, depending on how it shakes out, we need to certify or approve our preliminary, adopt, excuse me, there's the verb I was looking for, adopt our preliminary millage rate. So that needs to happen by the end of July to the very beginning of August.
And I think this balanced budget is based on the 2.75 mils
That's
that
right.
we're on now. I don't know that we'll be looking at a millage rate increase. I know I mentioned a rollback rate. We may not get there, but I don't see us increasing.
I mean, right now, I believe the value of 1 mil is 1.6 million, thereabouts, so something to consider. So a quarter of a mil is approximately 400,000, 0.25 of a mil. And I think our projected revenue is like 4.8 million, or 4.7?
4.637.
0.6, so 1 mil is about 1.6 million.
And what was budgeted,
Yeah, 1 point,
what was budgeted last year was, it's about a $500,000 increase.
correct, from the current year. But just something to think about, a quarter or 0.25 of 1 mil, roughly about 415,000. Just something to, so in other words, if the rollback rate was 2.5 mils, then we would be looking at 415,000 less in the general fund. Half of a mil, 830,000.
Okay.
From the data we have now.
But property values have gone up tremendously.
Yes, yeah. And I think they will for at least one more year.
Yeah. Okay. Moving along. Where are you on here now, Robin?
So, I mean, that was my overview on all funds and all revenue and expense line items. Maybe from there, I mean, we can go through every page if you like, or if we start on this budget summary page and say, well, let's dig into, this particular line, or this, what's making up this, and we can go into the specific department level. I guess I'd look for your guidance as to what you want to dig into from here.
Well, the only one I see, and fuel rates have gone up, but we make no more on the fuel than we ever did. And I'm wondering, to support the marina, if that's something we need to look at. A dime or whatever. I think we're making, 80 cents a gallon? Have you noticed a big hit, Krabby, on fuel sales since it's gone up through the roof?
If there has been any kind of pattern, I would say, would be that we're still getting a lot of people using their boats and whatnot. They might not be going as far. So they might not be going to Anna Maria Island to spend the day. They're just going to John's Pass Sandbar. So there has been a slight decrease in volume, but it's still a lot of traffic, still very busy. But red snapper season opening up, it was, I mean, we were selling it like crazy, you know, so.
Yeah, so our revenue hasn't declined.
No.
At any noticeable amount, all things considered, given the fact that the price has doubled in about 6 months, right?
Correct, yeah.
This has been my source of contention for my 3 years sitting up here, and it fell on deaf ears. There should be no reason that we make 80 cents a gallon when gas is at $2 and we're charging $2.80 for it. We shouldn't be charging, when it's $5, $5.80. It just kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing this. This should be based on percentages, not on an actual set rate. It drives me crazy, and I wish we could address this, even if it's a scaled down. And I totally get what the mayor's saying. You certainly don't want to say, okay, well, the same percentage at $2 at $2.80 would be $5 would look like $7.50. You probably can't do that. But did I get that right? Off the top of my head? No, I'm close, but that wasn't correct. But anyway, I think we need a sliding scale, because I think making the same percent a gallon at $2 and $5 is kind of not even worth the price of admission. Just my opinion on it.
Well, I think if you go by percentage-wise, and you kind of mentioned it, like if it was $2 and you have a percent set, then you're not, but when you get up to this higher scale that we're in now, it'll make us uncompetitive. Like, you know, we'd be $7 a gallon.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Krebby, don't get me wrong, I like making 80 cents when it's $2, but I think we need to make a little bit more as we get into not like I said, when it's $4, maybe it's, you know,
Yeah, we make
20%
a minimum of that. That's including our commercial discount. That is the minimum amount we make. So we do
Right.
make more, depending on what discounts are applied.
Okay.
So there's always a markup of at least $1 to $1.10, depending on, you know, how the price fluctuates. If it drops a little bit, we wait to drop that price. We don't drop it immediately when it drops.
Well, yeah, and you have inventory already,
Yeah,
right?
you still got to sell what you paid, you know, so much for in the tank at that rate.
Right. Okay, cool. I'm good with it. It's just that, like I said, that's always been my source of contention with it. To have a flat instead of a percentage-wise rate, and that percentage can scale up as we go up, just, you know, to make sure that we're not making the same amount at $2 as we are at $5. It just seems to be kind of silly, but we're good.
Okay.
It's a commodity. You have to compare yourself to the next pump. So.
Okay.
Excuse me. If you, any questions on, for example, since the next pages are the general fund, we start with summary of revenues by fund, followed by the expenditures by, excuse me, not the,
You know,
all funds, excuse me.
yeah. Bed tax, we've never collected that. I know it's got to be used for a certain thing. Is that something we need to start reaching out and trying to take advantage of?
Yes, and we have been, and we've utilized some of the funding for some events, but no, Jay mentioned we've reached out, and apparently we are going to receive in-kind funding for marketing, I believe, for the Seafood Festival and possibly a few other events. Jay?
Yes, so right now, they voted yesterday for TDC elite funding. So Seafood Festival made the first cut. It's going to the Board of Commissioners, County Board of Commissioners, for $25,000 for that for next year. And then the collegiate tournaments that we do out here, I know King of the Beach receives funding, and that's not necessarily us, but they do have their event here. And then most of the softball tournaments as well that are hosted here, we receive that funding for. So we receive it. We've definitely got to earn it, but we receive it, and in small amounts in that way. So we're looking at more creative. They do have some grant programs for different things that we've looked at as well. They discontinued those in 2020, but they've discussed reopening those. So.
Yeah, and I think as all of you are aware, and the public may or may not be aware, that is tax collected by all transient rental accommodations, 6%, but it is collected to the county, and then the county has a formula that is provided by state statute as to what it can be spent on, and I believe it's nearly 60% of all the tourist development tax collections can only be spent for marketing and advertising, which is what the Visit St. Pete Clearwater arm of the county does, and the Tourist Development Council that has, I guess, a few mayors, other representatives, they're the ones that ensure the compliance with the statute, but as Jay stated, also provide different funding levels and amounts for mainly for, I guess we could call them special types of events, whether for sports or entertainment, those types of activities. So we'll be pursuing whatever revenues they have available, and they do have a lot of data for the collections on their website. I think I've shared that with the commission before, but it's not something that we can directly levy or collect ourselves as a city, nor the other 23 cities in the county, and it's not something that we receive a direct allocation like other revenue sources throughout that the county and the state may allow.
Okay, thank you.
May I please ask a question on page 14, general fund, the operating expenditures, Johns Pass Village, what's all included in that number? The $1.8 million.
That's just the main, I think, Megan, you can provide, but it includes the maintenance and other work at the village. No, let me get to that.
Yeah, the boardwalk itself. I
We have
think
an
we've got
account, maintenance dredging. So there's
Oh, so that's where we put-
it's a major dredging project, but it's an operating, not capital, because it's not resulting in an asset to the city. It's just, we're just moving sand, so it's not capital in nature.
So that's where we put the dredging allocation from the state.
Okay, that makes
Okay.
sense. I was going to get to the point where I didn't want to ever hear somebody in Johns Pass Village saying how much they bring to the city.
Go back. So yeah, any other questions for, again, each of the funds are listed, the revenues, the expenditures, and then we get into some of the details within each of the funds, starting with the general fund, and just all the revenues, for example, that are on page 12. Sorry, page 11 is where the general fund revenues are listed. If you have any questions regarding really no, I think, significant changes other than that's where you'll see the second line at the top of that page, the transfer from the parking fund. As I mentioned earlier, we're separately accounting for all parking revenues and expenditures in its own fund, but here's the amount that we've, calculated that will help fund the general fund for just regular city operation, general fund operations. There's, again, quite a bit of lines, but this is what I had mentioned, some of the ones that we do have some control over, quite a few that we don't. You'll see all our recreation programs, after school, summer program, field rentals, some of those that, well, I think Jay can add, but I'm pretty sure we're limited with the after school and the summer program because we can only have a certain capacity of the number of students or kids, so the revenue can only be so much.
Yes, so, after-school program is licensed, and we are limited to 70 in that building, and we got away during COVID from using this building. I think we're working to get back to that, but we did also raise our fees for the first time in probably 10 years for the after-school program, coming out of COVID, which in hindsight wasn't the nicest thing to do, but it needed to be done. And as far as the rest of those, we had a department-wide meeting as a rec department and went through the fee schedule. So you guys will see when we go through the fee schedule this next time around that just about every one of our fees is going to increase. Some substantially, some easily, but just to keep us more competitive and also for the increased costs. So those numbers will go up a little bit to cover any changes we have.
And some of the other I mean, we can increase, field rentals can, conceivably, you could have more one year, less another year, but same with sponsorships. And so again, as we mentioned earlier, some revenues, we have a little bit of control that we can, if we were to promote more sponsorships, we may generate more revenue, more softball games and tournaments, we could generate more field rental, just to give you an idea. Parking fines, for example, we've enhanced our parking enforcement because it wasn't really as robust as it should have been. So likely, although we're still budgeting fairly conservatively relative to the last few years, we're expecting that to be higher than it has been in prior years. We've expanded our enforcement with the staff to include residential enforcement that apparently we were doing minimal of that in the past. So
Thinking a little outside the box, have we ever considered advertising for local businesses on our website and offering that service for a fee?
you bring up, I've had that in prior cities that I've worked in. It's never proceeded where I have been, and some may guess why in a previous city that I worked in, but it involved the type of what would you allow, whom would you allow to advertise? So you'd have to be fairly clear as to what type you would.
Well, I'm just thinking, you have a business, you choose the business, and they advertise on the website for a fee, and they have a plaque on, when you walk into their building, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a restaurant, that they support the local community. So, I don't know, just thinking outside the box. Giving our local businesses an opportunity to bring some of the tourism dollars back into the city.
Yeah, we could look, something we could look into, sure. Advertising or, assistance, for example, like our dog park that we're going to renovate, where we could look to existing businesses and maybe they would want to contribute, by putting a sign or, renovations brought to you by by Petco or whomever, as an example. Or if they wanted to advertise in the future, we do have some advertising that we do sell on our softball fields, and I think that's the only place, Jay?
So there's a lot of some of the similar ideas as this. I know Grabby's over here too, shaking his head. Grunt Hunt's one of those opportunities for a lot of the boating community of businesses. We do our outfield banners on the athletic facilities. Keep this fresh in your mind. I do have a funding request at 6 o'clock that talks about this too. So, and it's more sponsorship opportunities, whether it's the field, whether it's in the dog park, whether it's, different places. But as far as going on the website, we'll put together flyers for these events, or we put together the event site that we use for Seafood Fest and other events that allows those businesses to kind of target those particular markets of, genre markets of people they're looking for. So it just really depends, but we do have the flexibility for a lot of that. I do know the website's, potential in another part of the discussion, but there's a lot of others that we can use too.
Well, and we actually, it was brought up a couple of years ago about businesses sponsoring parks, like a lot of our pocket parks and whatnot. I think that's kind of how Friends of Parks and Rec got started, wasn't it, Jay? So I don't know where we stand as far as getting any businesses to actually take a bite at it. But it's an ongoing process, I think.
Robin, I do have a question. When you were talking about your former city and putting advertising on the website, there had to be restrictions, right? I mean, as
Well,
far
that
as,
was, the basis of the discussion was exactly that. What restrictions do you put in? Because you get into, for example, political or religious organizations, do you want to allow those? And that's why the three prior cities I've been in, they chose not to do that.
well, yeah, that's a black hole. I mean, we drive Tom crazy if we try to do something. Look at Tom. Yeah, I think we just avoid, it was a great idea, Ray, but I think that the minutia around it would probably, oh, boy, yeah.
Yeah, there have been some cities that did sell advertising, and it was very, very restrictive, but even, I think Honolulu, Hawaii did years ago, but then they stopped it after a couple of years. It's just not something that, but we can still look into it, but there's examples like that really there's opportunities for, I think, cities to do a little bit more advertising or marketing. Some cities have gone as far as selling advertising in some of their infrastructure. So in addition to parks, even I've read where even some vehicles had. But again, then you're back to the restrictions as to what you're allowed, similar to the
It's
website.
NASCAR, man. We'll decorate some of the public works cars, and, I mean, we can
Or,
really juice this up a little.
or our shirts, I guess, we could have something on our, maybe not such a good idea. M&Ms.
Okay. Let's keep it moving. Where are we?
So as I meant, the line item, general fund revenues, and I went over the page 12, excuse me, regarding the preliminary tax roll, and essentially that page, although kind of very small print on the big screen, does show where we are relative to the other municipalities. But we will, as Andrew said, we will have this final tax roll in early July, it looks like. And continuing really in the general fund, just by categories, our operating revenue by kind of the main categories, and our operating expenditures by department as we get down to page 14. And then from page 15 on, it goes by department, both revenues and expenditures. Of course, there are, some departments, like the Board of Commissioners, the City Manager's Office, HR, that do not generate revenue. And that was a comment made earlier, and so we would have, but these, starting on page 15, kind of just show you more of our expenditures per department or by department, including some of the capital items within each department that we've discussed before. So if there are any questions or comments on those?
Robin, all of this is based on, I'm talking about the items from page 15 on, these increases that we're seeing, a lot of them are going to be related to that 8%?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And it includes
That's what I
the
thought.
benefits, so it'll look different in our next iteration.
All right. I mean, just from what I saw initially, and I haven't dug that deeply into them, but, there's nothing that really stands out that doesn't have a corresponding document with it that says, okay, well, capital improvements are this, and that's what's causing the increase. There may be a couple that I missed, but I'd actually like to hear what the other guys have to say.
Yeah, and the other thing you and I talked about was cell phones. The consolidation of cell phones. I don't know if we're using one provider or if we're kind of
We are using one,
all
I think
over.
just Verizon. I'm pretty sure.
Verizon. And is it one big group plan for the city?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and each, you can see as you go through through pretty much a lot of the departments where, part of the exercise was to look at at expenditures and ways to reduce certain things that we may not be doing or other options. And I mean, just, you know, for example, since it's up on the screen in the city manager's office, I went through that, you know, my budget and looked at things that really, do we need to do them? What are we spending it on? I mean, you know, things as postage, printing and binding, et cetera, you know, promotions, office supplies, you know, we're not, things that we can determine whether you can reduce because you're not really, you know, utilizing or just changes in technology. And as you go through, you'll see other similar
Yeah.
changes in other departments. Yeah.
Now, I guess next is city clerk. Clara, did you have something on here you'd
Yes,
like
I
to
did.
discuss?
I'm looking to get a better public records request program, which is for our emails and documents, because the one we're using provided by network people, we're having a difficult time with it. It doesn't flag duplicates and doesn't bring up the blind copies. And so if we have 80,000 emails to go through, or 60, we have to go through them all, and you won't know what's duplicates until you go through them all. And now with the new program, if there's 40,000, 80,000 emails and 50 of those are duplicates, it flags them, and we don't even have to look at those. We can just look through the others. But it's a better program all the way around.
So that's the increase in your software budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that's something that network people have been doing?
No, I've always done it. I
Well,
use
you
Proofpoint,
were
and
you
it's
mentioned-
very basic, and it's difficult to pull a lot of, it doesn't let you put a lot of keywords in it to find things, and so you have to do everything separate.
You had mentioned that network people were having to do some of this for you, though.
Oh, where they have to go on a commissioner's computer and all, but with this program, it'll be able to do that on its own.
Okay. And it's used by a number of other cities as a proven
The county's,
program.
looking to use it. They're talking to them now, but we can find out what other cities are using it. And we went through like 3 different, companies to see what they do. And this seems to be the best of what we need to do. And we wouldn't have to go through the network people to access computers, and nobody would have to bring them in and let them look. It automatically will do all that.
Okay. Anyone else have anything on city clerk? Community development, I think we've already discussed that, adding the person. And I'm sure that's needed, because poor Director Portell, with all they've got going on there, I know they need some help. Finance, just keep scraping those coins in, Andrew.
Trying to.
Fire department, looks good to me. Anyone else? HR is jumping up. Professional services going from 5 to 9,000. And, so we're going from 121,000 to 141,000.
No, I think some of this was related to Paycom increases, but I think we have to research the detail behind just the overall increase, but
Yeah, because I don't really see it even.
What are we leasing for $5,000?
What I was, you know.
I thought it was the biometric time clocks, maybe?
okay, we will find out.
Is that it, Sean? It's the time clocks? Okay. Anyone else got anything on HR?
The salary and wages for 23, it doesn't, going back to page 7, I don't see, there was an increase.
Well, salaries and wages are going to totally change.
Yeah,
Right, but this is a part-time position, so it would just be the flat 8% increase? Or from current year to fiscal '23?
IT. And I don't know if that's something, we've talked about this before, bringing it in-house. I don't know if that's the right route to go, or if we're getting enough bang for our buck with the network people, or if we need to put that out on an RFP.
That will go out to RFP, because the next year is their last year,
Okay.
but it will go out to RFP later this year.
Okay. Johns Pass Village, that's got the dredging in it. That's the big difference there. And Robin, we've had some discussion about the condition of the landscaping, flower beds and whatnot. And I'm assuming that's maintenance, parks and grounds going.
This, if you're in for Johns Pass Village, that's
Yeah.
the increase to the 90,000.
I have a hard time believing we were spending $90,000 down there on keeping that up.
No, we spent, we spent 15,000 in fiscal '21, but that's likely just basic maintenance. I mean, with nothing to the extent of what the discussions that we've had, but that will be
Well-
increased here and from the Archibald Fund for citywide, as well as in the general fund for ROC, and all of our parks.
Yeah, because I see it was in the budget for 2022, it just wasn't being done.
Right.
Then apparently. Okay. Anyone else got anything on that? Law enforcement, it is what it is.
Just to notify Mr. Mayor and Commission, I'll be meeting Friday with Pinellas County Sheriff's Office just to review. I have some interesting or intriguing questions, really, because this is my first go-around with the agreement, but just to let you know, so I'll report back what that comes. I do have some various questions on the agreement I'll be meeting with the captain and the director of their Fiscal Affairs Bureau.
Okay.
I think I'd mentioned, we just received this the week before last, the renewal for next year. So it showed a 4.2% increase over the current year.
Okay, legal services. Looks good. Non-departmental. There are a couple of things on here I wanted to bring up. One is the Chamber of Commerce. We don't have parity between Gulf Beach's Chamber and Madeira Beach Treasure Island Chamber. I truly think Madeira Beach Treasure Island Chamber deserves parity with Gulf Beach's Chamber. They've really grown that and do a lot of hard work and have been really proactive in their work for the city. So I would like to see at least parity between those two chambers, if not a slight increase for the chambers. And same way for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. They do a lot for this community. And I'd like to see an ongoing contribution to them to help support them. So they get no support at all. They're totally run by the volunteers that are involved down there.
Mr. Mayor, which line item are you looking at? I didn't see that.
Those are the contributions to the chambers have been in the city manager's budget. We're going to move them to non-departmental.
Okay.
And then so the line item will be the excuse me,
004?
yes.
Okay.
Other contributions and
548,
donations
004.
where we had
Gotcha.
10,000 budgeted for the current year, and we will add for fiscal '23 mainly for the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
I'd like to see us, yeah, if.
Oh, I
if
agree
we're all
completely
in
on the
agreement.
Coast Guard. I can't comment on the other one because I sit on the Madeira Beach Treasure Island Board, but,
Okay.
but yeah, I agree.
Parks.
So part of the contractual service for this, and I think Megan can clarify, is, for example, the tree trimming? No, not in this.
Where is the big increase for the parks on,
In the Archibald Fund.
okay, all right. And did I bypass it
I
or?
don't think we.
No, you haven't passed
Yeah.
Archibald yet. But
Okay.
Parks is, this is the contractual services covers the landscaping, which may go away. I'm bringing that, my plan is to bring that back in-house.
It's, all of our parks, Megan, they really need some TLC. And I think everyone's in agreement on that.
It is budgeted for '23.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be, as I said, in the Archibald Fund and then the
Okay.
general fund.
Thank you. Public Works. Recreational Professional Services, is that, what's that for offhand?
That is the mowing contract.
Okay. And I think, are they doing it more regularly, or is that the increase for fertilizing and whatnot, or?
That is more regular. It's once a week, year-round. And we do have proposals coming in from them for fertilizing and all that other stuff as well.
Okay. So you might have an amendment.
We should be able to within I have an increase in here for grounds and parks plus Archibald, so we should be able to cover that
Okay.
without any hesitation.
Jay, are there areas where we need to get some sprinklers put in? I see lawns, grass getting burned up. I noticed that, in fact, at the fire station, and, in particular, when I walked across the ground the other day where it was just burned up.
That's just a maintenance check. We just spent, I spent 2 full days digging holes last week myself, just out in this park, and we're working our way down because there's 35 zones in Rock Park times 20 sprinklers per zone.
So
plus-
we've got sprinklers, they're just
Yes,
not
we have
functioning,
them full property, it's just, we haven't had rain and,
and the sprinklers aren't functioning, is that
Yeah.
what it is? So, including the firehouse?
yes. Yeah, well, we utilize reclaim and we save money, which is fantastic, but what I have been explained is that we are at the end of the system, so we collect all of the debris at the end, which is our benefit, I suppose.
I know a lot of times too, if you don't have it on during the night, it's not gonna come on during the day, because they must cut pumps off or something to where you get a trickle, particularly if we're at the end of the line. So I figure when Clint has nothing to do, we can get him some grass plugs from Home Depot and. Okay.
And in the maintenance, I mean to interrupt, in the maintenance grounds parks, 546008 is, again, what we increased from 40,000 to 80,000.
Yeah.
In addition to when we get to the Archibald Fund.
It needs it, you know, we need to just bite the bullet and do it and get everything back in shape and just, you know, if you're going to be a kind of a destination city, you need to look like it.
And our local option sales tax is the penny for Pinellas, or the 7th cent sales tax. That's our portion, and again, that's based on a state statute, a formula as to what we receive.
Right, and we talked about last year when we were going over the budget, finishing up the undergrounding this year, even if we pay for the balance of it out of general funds and, and then replace it with pennies for Pinellas money when we get it. So hopefully that's still
We can
on the
have a
road,
meeting on it tomorrow.
on the move. Okay.
I'm sorry, Rob, what are you having a meeting on tomorrow? I didn't,
On the undergrounding, right?
On the
Megan,
undergrounding?
your meet
Okay.
with the contractor to go over the undergrounding.
so to finish up, it'd be to finish up Gulf Boulevard, right? Yes. Okay, and what's the projected date on that? Like,
Can I get back to you on that?
sure, yeah, anytime, Megan. You can get back to me.
Have more information after tomorrow.
Right, no,
tomorrow.
I mean, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think that one thing that, once Gulf Boulevard is done and we're realizing the benefits of having our utilities underground, as we start looking at projects into the future, Gulf Boulevard's great having it underground, but the rest of the city is still going to be above ground. And I don't really think that we should be doing a whole lot of road projects without that being a part of the equation going forward. We're way too affluent of a community. We've got money coming in different areas, and I think that needs to be part of our projects going forward, because you know what? If the wind blows a little hard, your electricity, I mean, I've already had power outages for what looked like no apparent reason at all. You know, your internet goes down, your air conditioner goes off. At some point, this is something that we need to address. That was one of the main reasons why I blew a gasket when our Crystal Island project came in $6 million over budget, and we didn't even underground the utilities back there. So I think that should be, you know, obviously we can't address it on this budget. We've got a lot of other projects that are ahead of that. But I think we need to start looking at that as Gulf Boulevard gets finished and we see the benefits of that and what the benefits could be for the rest of the city.
Will do.
While we're on Archibald Park Fund, the groins, I know we don't really have a firm price yet because we're still getting the studies and all, but hopefully we can also, I know we've got some state funding on it, but we can also look, maybe we can, I doubt it, but talk the county into getting some funding since we've never gotten any beach nourishment money. Maybe they can help with the groins since that's kept us for the past 60 years from needing any sand nourishment.
I would, if we are having discussions at that level, the TDC, that capital outlay program that I mentioned with potential funding, beach renourishment is part of that, and they discontinued that program 3 or 4 years ago, and they keep saying they're gonna bring it back, and they haven't yet. So I don't know if they need a nudge from somebody, but that's one of the potential funding spots, because the beach, there's a way to prove that the beach provides heads and beds dollars, and that's where that funding comes from, so it's.
Yeah. Well, part of the problems right now is getting rights of way along the beach, on the beaches north of us, and unless the Corps of Engineers gets sign off from the property owners, beach nourishment may not happen again. So until, unless some of these property owners that are digging their feet in the sand decide they want to sign off. But we don't have to worry about that, so. Building department, Frank, can I help pick the boat out? It's got to have some rod holders and. The only other thing, unless y'all have got something else, was capital outflow. Looking at a 2-year window to build a parking garage. And Robin, you and I had this discussion about it's not going to take 2 years to build it, but I guess between engineering and all, probably $6 million, 5 or 6 million is probably relatively accurate. Sanitation. And does anyone have anything before I go to that one? I was flipping right through. I didn't have any questions on any others, but y'all stop me if you see anything you want to discuss. I talked about this anchor around our neck last year and said I think it was time for it to die. And I read an article in Florida Trend magazine where cities right and left are just getting rid of recycling. It's just costing too much, and there's no one's buying the recycled material. It's contaminated. People aren't participating. They're throwing garbage into the recycle bins, which is contaminating an entire truck. And for the most part, I say for the most part, a large portion of the recycled material is simply going to the landfill and the incinerator. And I think it's time for us to cut off recycling. And Mr. Gomez, I know you've had some discussions on this.
We will be bringing back to you at our July workshop details on what's happening with recycling, and we have been utilizing Waste Connections for 3 years, or many years. Okay, so a decade. I was thinking of the most recent agreement, and they have provided us options for next year that would in effect double the cost of providing recycling. So we are looking at options and how we continue, if we do continue it, so again, with numerous options, or possibly, as the mayor stated, not providing that service. So we will bring that in great detail at the July workshop, July 27th. And one way or another, I mean, we will not have any rate increases going forward. The question I'm sure that we will hear will be, well, if you are altering the service, then would you have rate reductions? And that's what we will provide in the detail, whether that is part of whether there are any or not. It's, if you're not paying for the recycling materials, which again, as the mayor stated, for several years now, a lot of recycling has just not been recycled. It ends up in landfills, it ends up as regular trash. Just the market has changed significantly. China, Malaysia, Indonesia used to purchase quite a bit of the recycling collected in the U.S. up until around 2018. That changed significantly, but the markets had already been in a little bit of a decline, markets and companies that were previously buying recycled items, paper, even paper and plastic and cardboard, which are your much more valuable recyclable materials. So going forward, we'll provide the data and we'll have to make a decision what we do starting, I believe our contract runs through December 31st. So what we do beginning January 1, we will again bring you lots of data and information on July the 27th. And from my prior experience, we will hear from probably numerous residents.
Well, certainly, there are many recycling facilities around if they want to take it there, but I just think it's time to make that decision. We're spending money for no reason if it's not being truly recycled. I mean, I'd love to recycle if there was a market for it, but there's just not. And I understand the county may be going up on tipping fees again. So,
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, I didn't finish my comment, I
Oh, okay.
apologize no, I'm sorry, when you mentioned, Mayor, about if we end recycling, then we will have likely increases in the tonnage that is collected and then taken to the waste energy plant or the landfill. Sorry, that was it.
yeah, but we would also still be, there's another $7 per household of an increase that we would not have. We wouldn't necessarily be decreasing because we've done away with recycle, but we wouldn't be increasing to
rate.
keep the recycle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is there any way to confirm that the recycling is going to the landfill?
That's,
Well, waste, Megan, you're more, it's just been a
I mean, if that's the
challenge.
case, it's a no-brainer.
that's the case. That is the case.
So every year, we have to do an annual recycling report. It's provided by Waste Connections, but it shows us the tonnage that they've picked up. Does it necessarily say that of the 50,000 tons that they've picked up, that 2 of them have gone to the incinerator? No. But I can ask and see if they can provide me with details on that.
I think that would be awesome. I mean, that would at least give us a reason to make a decision one way or the other.
If we get rid of recycling, we will have a lot of backlash. We do have a very high percentage rate of residents that do recycle.
Oh, sure.
Is it contaminated?
But if they know it's just
Probably.
going to the landfill anyway.
Yeah, so Waste Connections did share, when we met with them, if I recall correctly, 60%.
I thought it was a little bit higher than
Or a
that.
little higher is the collection rate, and the contamination rate, if I recall, also was fairly low.
Yes.
So, I mean, fairly low, probably under 20% for a contamination rate. I came from a city where the contamination rate was 90%, very high. So it's difficult, and then even I tried for quite some time when I was in Georgia to find out where are you taking paper? Because paper can go to the pulp mills, and I don't remember if there's a pulp mill near the Tampa Bay area. And if not, then that's an indicator that that might, not all paper may be recycled. Is there, so we would need to find out where is Waste Connection taking specifically plastics and cardboard, which are your two largest recycled materials. A lot of cardboard because you drive around the city on any trash, Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and there's a lot of boxes. I walked out of where I live, and there were 4 boxes laying, and then about another half dozen in the trash can. So, I mean, clearly a lot of cardboard, but we need to determine where is that ending up.
Mr. Mayor, and if I could, but that kind of detail is going to be really important this year because we're updating the comp plan, and we all had requirements historically to recycle, and there was a certain percentage of waste that was supposed to be going into recycling. That's an old policy, but it persists throughout the history of our policy requirements. So if we're going to change that policy, we will want to back it up with clear indication of where everything's going and what the overall, benefit or lack is.
Right. No, and thank you, I mean, interrupt, but thank you, Linda, because that is in our comprehensive plan that I wanted to mention, but thanks, Linda.
I would love, maybe we can get back issue of Florida Trend. It was a few months ago to share with everyone. I wish I hadn't pitched it now, but it was talking about the way the state views recycle is that even if it goes to the incinerator, it's considered recycle because it's being reused as energy for the generator. So when you read that article and you see how the figures are really manipulated on a lot of things, it was really an eye-opening article because it did talk about how the state calculated everything and how cities in general are beginning to just pull back out of the recycling program. So we'll get some more.
So we'll bring that back to you.
Yeah, we get more details, that'd be great.
Okay. Anyone else have anything?
I just have one last request, Andrew. On the property tax revenue, which is 45.4% of our general fund operating revenue, is there any way to determine how much of that is commercial versus residential? Is that an easy?
Yeah, we have.
Those property values would come from the property appraiser. That might need to be a special request, because we just have, just taxable property. We do have taxable value new construction, but on this table, there's not a residential versus commercial breakout, but we can ask the PA's office to see if they could provide that.
Yeah, they do, when they do provide us the detail, I'm pretty sure it's on there. That just might not be it might not even be in the certified tax roll. I think it comes later, but we'll check, because I think we do have it for last year. And for the prior year, it was an 80-20, 80% came from residential, 20% from commercial. But you have to take into account that the majority of our residential, I think it's over 65%, are condos. So, and if I'm recalling the numbers, about 1,660 of our 3,600 total parcels in the city are identified as condos. What we don't know is the percentage or number of those 1,660 condos that are homesteaded or not. Likely the number that are no longer homesteaded has grown. Same with our single-family homes. That has likely grown based on market conditions and the buying and selling of real estate. So if that's the case, then it's almost as if it's a little bit of it's not completely accurate to say that, well, 80% is residential, even though condos are identified as residential, but if they're not homesteaded, then they're taxed, again, at a higher, it's just the value is much higher, combined with the fact that it essentially has become a commercial activity. It's income to someone. So that's what we were hoping to provide that, a lot more data on that as well, because it was a little bit just not precise in saying that, yeah, 80% of our properties are residential. Yes, but because people are physically living there, but if most of your properties, again, are renters, then, again, as I said, they can be termed as commercial rather than residential for tax purposes.
In Pinellas County as a whole, there's 408,233 residential parcels, 22,835 commercial. That's the county as a whole. Property appraiser's website has a lot of good information. I could probably just dig it right from their website.
You know, it'd be an interesting exercise is what the value of the commercial property is versus, so if it was 80-20 as far as quantity, what would be the value of the commercial property versus the residential property? It would probably skew a little closer to, I wouldn't say 50-50, but it would definitely bring the 80% down. And then if you had the condos and the rentals and things like that, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting exercise. Thanks for bringing that up, Ray.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep.
The only other thing I wanted to mention was getting us a digital sign for 150th Avenue coming into the city to announce things that are going on in the city, fuel prices, whatever else. We've got the one out here in front of City Hall, but unless you're driving by to specifically look at it, it's never seen. So I'd like to see that put in the budget this year. I don't think they're all that expensive. I don't know, maybe we'll have to change our sign ordinance, Linda, I don't know. Or can we get away with stuff that,
Well, yeah, I already changed that sign ordinance because when I came here, I noticed you had one and they were illegal.
Yeah, we did, so we did.
okay, good.
Rules for thee, not for me.
Good.
Yeah.
We allow them for public entity because we use it for emergency management.
Okay, very good. So and I know we got some portable signs, but it'd be nice to have a nice city entry sign. Unless you guys vote me down. Nope, good. Okay. All right, anything else?
We are good. Thank you again for your attention, input, discussions, greatly appreciated.
Thank
We
you,
will-
sir. Well, with that, this meeting is adjourned at 4:22.